a door at the wrong time, and you're just like, oh my god, I'm gonna die for this, aren't I?
Jumping into symbology here, the Boeing logo is a Saturnian symbol. So one of the oldest of all. Oh yeah, look at it.
So yeah, it does.
Yeah. So what is bowing? What is the bow? The archer, right? So you're archering, and the archer is what? Sagittarius. Sagittarius is when Saturn is at its highest in the sky during the winter months.
You can throw Nimrod in there too.
After the harvest, yeah, exactly. So there's some interesting aspects with that. And so here we were just talking about that. We're looking at this symbology even today. Right there in plain sight that nobody sees because they're not taught to see it. So yeah.
Hidden in plain sight always.
I need to send you my book, man. It'll blow your mind. Anyway, so yeah.
And well, Hans, you also mentioned before stream that you've also now been initiated.
Yeah, I was initiated. I've done Rosicrucian stuff before when I was in Egypt in 2016 with Stephen Mailer. We did an initiation in the King's Chamber, which is why I brought that up, because when you're in the box and you're going through, your physical death and your rebirth for your initiation, it's powerful. And I had to go down to the subterranean shaft. I always talk about this. I go down to the subterranean area of the Great Pyramid Complex, and I try and get down there before anybody else so that I have the dead-end shaft to myself for at least 10 minutes. And you have an outer body experience in the box, in the King's Chamber, and then Queen's Chamber is boring to me. To other people, it's amazing, but to me, it's boring. And so the second they open up the subterranean, I'm down there. And it takes people a long time to get down there because the descending passageway it's like 500 feet down and diagonal as well. So you're going down into it, and man, if you have vertigo like I do and claustrophobia as well, it's an interesting trip down there because you're like, you just want to get to the bottom and everything's like super compact and compressed. But then when you leave, you're just like, oh, that pinpoint of light is where I'm going. Oh, geez. So yeah.
Why don't they just add an escalator?
They might. You never know. But they're going to try and do all virtual these days, which is really sad that they don't want to let people in there, even though that's their massive money.
You fly all the way to Egypt, and they like sit you down, and they give you a little VR headset and a little.
Yeah, no. Here's a gondola ride around the pyramids, and here's your VR. And they're trying to do this. We were talking about Peru earlier. They're trying to do this at Machu Picchu, because they figure the amount of tourism there is destroying the sediment in the land because it rains so much, as I was saying when we were talking earlier, that it's starting to disrupt how all those stones that are megalithic that have been there for thousands of years are starting to move and displace.
This is a rough one though, because without tourism, and like dirty expansionists, colonizers, like there would be no Machu Picchu. Like it was some white dude that had a bunch of money
and lost.
That found it. It was I can't remember his
Thor Heyerdahl.
And the guy that built the railroad that brings you from
Ollantaytambo to there.
So if it weren't for these like rich white explorer dudes, like the people that have Machu Picchu,
I've never thought of it like that, but ouch. Yeah, no. And it's a 2.5 hour train ride to the city below Machu Picchu, where you either take the trail and you walk up it, or you take the trail.
We're talking about, this is Aguas Calientes, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. You take the trail from Ollantaytambo, which is like 7-8 days in the jungle. It's kind of crazy. But the train is interesting because you can only do it by road because the train won't stop. But about an hour outside of Ollantaytambo is this place called Napa Iglesia or Napa Wapa. There's two names to it. And it's this cave, it's 1,000 feet up this ravine.
Wow.
And you're walking through shale the whole way up. So there's no real footing or pathway. And the trucks are, like shale, like loose rock, basically.
That's sketchy.
Yeah, super sketchy. When you get up there, And there's two things, or there's three different histories there. So in Peru, you see these three different histories, especially when you're in like Cusco. You'll see the buildings that have the super megaliths on the bottom, the medium megaliths in the middle, and the small shale, not shale, but like glyphic rock above that that's even smaller. And so these are three different historical periods. And so the middle period came across the old stuff and rebuilt it and refurbished it. And then the newer cultures came across both of them and rebuilt and refurbished them. And so you get to this Napa Iglesia, Napa Huaca spot. And part of it is like more modern Inca, what you would see during the Spanish conquistador era. There's this rock that somebody dynamited the top off of, thinking that it was hollow inside and there would be gold in it, but it's super old. And then you have something that could be younger or even older, and it's this wall. My office is what, 15 foot here, so it's about 15, 16 feet, you know, that or 3 meters, 4 meters, something like this. And be more than 3 meters anyway, sorry, 5 meters, there we go. And in the middle, it's like flat surface cut into the bedrock of the cave. And you're like, how are they cutting in and then removing the back wall and cutting back out 90-degree angles on the side? And in the middle of it is a sunken doorway or a sunken alcove that has 3 or 4 situations going on there that sink back about half meter, basically. And so this is mysterious because the tolerance of the surface of this is like 1/100th or more of an inch, which is, you know, that's hard to do with a human hand without machinery. And it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere that you would drag a generator up there and cut this out of the stuff. And you see this all over Peru, especially at Ollantaytambo, where I jumped the rope and I climbed up to one section and it had all these cross hatchings. This is actually on my website. I wish I could bring it up at the moment, but I can't. Anyway. The picture gallery on my website isn't working so great, so don't try and bring it up right now.
So this is if you don't take the train from what Aguas Calientes to
yeah, exactly, correct, yeah. So it's like it's a third of the way to Machu Picchu, but then you get up to Machu Picchu, and my God, that site is amazing. And then you have Huayna Picchu across from it, which is. Did
you do it?
Oh God, no way, man.
Okay.
The
person I was with was like pushing me to do it, and we
didn't have time. We would have had to have gotten there early in the morning to do it.
Well, if you had all the time in the world, would you have done it?
Well, that's the thing. As I was saying in the green room, it was like, oh my God, we paid $200 a piece to be here, and it started pissing rain. And Brian Forrester's like, it always pisses rain here during this time of year. It was September, and so it's like after monsoon. This kind of monsoon rain. I'm like, man, I paid good money to be here, and they're all going back to the cantina to have cigarettes, Cusqueños, and Pisco Sours or Coca-Colas waiting for the bus.
Freaking Coca tea? Yeah, let's do it.
I'm like, I've got this whole site to myself. I was the only person there, and so I wandered the entire site, and then I got brave, and I'm like, I'm going to go up to the Inca Bridge. And so I wandered up the trail, man. It was one of the, living in Nepal, I've been on slippery trails. I mean, there's a saying in Nepal, Chiplo Bato, or sorry, shit, now I can't remember it. Anyway, pardon my French. Rato Mato Chiplo Bato, which means red mud, slippery earth. So when it rains, like everything washes out under your feet. But here you are on these, diorite slabs that are just covered with moss, super slippery.
Yeah.
It's pouring rain. And there's no guide rail, and you're looking down.
Yeah, dude, that's the most surreal feeling, is being like, up there.
That's
and there's literally
1,000 feet.
Yeah, dude, there's nothing at all to prevent you from just walking backwards with your phone and just falling off a mountain. Like literally, there's nothing at all.
And I'm holding my GoPro, trying to take photos. I'm getting a little concerned because I'm the only person on the trail. Finally, 3 tourists, these French couple and their friend walked by me, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's somebody else at least out here. But when I passed the guard post, one of the guards decided he's going to follow me out because they've had too many people to get down to the Inca Bridge, and they want to jump over the bamboo rail. And the bridge is interesting. It's like a meter wide or less. It's old. and it crosses, you know, a 15-foot gap. But then you look up the rest of the Inca Trail that people would run on, and it's these half-tree beams hammered into holes in the wall all the way up the cliff. And you're like, that's a 2,000-foot drop off. And you've got some guy with Kipu running up this to go to the next village. Unbelievable. Seriously unbelievable. But this is what they did. And so, yeah, no, mind blown with that. But going back to Ayante Tambo and weird cutouts. So I climbed all the way up to the top of this ridge, and there's a section of the wall that's cut out. It's about the size of a queen bed. We talked about this, I think, in the last show, actually. And sitting in front of it is the piece that was cut out of it. And if you measure that, which I did, and then you measure the interior wall and the back cutout and the back dive of it, there's only like a centimeter at most of material missing. And so the queen size bed is just sitting there in front of it. And you stop and you go, I understand them cutting back on top, bottom, and sides. How did they cut out the back wall? And so that has always been the mystery of that. Anyway, that was my long story short, short again.
Most of these places, I want to go, but like you personally, it's like the legs get a little shaky when you're on those cliff edges. Like you almost want to have a parachute on your backpack or on your back or something, like just in case.
That's why I was asking about what is it called? Ayana Picchu, which is like
Ayana Picchu. Yeah, it's across from Machu Picchu,
right? And you see it when you're there, and there's like it's an extra ticket, whatever, to go on there. But I'm just like, I looked at that thing, and it was just like, there's no way in my entire life would I ever try and climb that thing. And they have a death count. They have an annual death count. And when I was there, the death count for that year, and I think it was in March or April that I was there, it had already been 3. And you got to sign a waiver that's like, if I die, I die. And
the angle and the moisture, this is the problem with the moisture. The angle of that is more dramatic than Chichen Itza, which if you've ever seen anybody climbing Chichen Itza, I mean, you're holding on for dear life as you go up it, because
and I've got a size 14.
That's right.
So it's hard enough to just go upstairs in people's normal houses with a size 14 shoe. So I was just looking at that thing like my feet won't fit on those steps like at all. I'd have to be barefoot and like cut my toe off.
You've seen the videos online of it, man. People are flying up and down it like it's nobody's business.
Not me.
Like I'm sorry. I have, I've been living in Nepal. I've been to really high places, but man, I get vertigo. Even then I did. Because you get to a point, you're just like, wow, this is such a commanding view, and then you do the inevitable and you go, oh.
Right, don't look down. Don't look down.
Really high. Ooh, and then everything stops, and you get that weird cold rush, and you're just like, okay, adrenaline's pumping, fight or flight. Okay, I'm just gonna sit here and take in the view. I'm just gonna sit here and take in the view. So
one thing I have learned in those situations, like where you need to just like sit and take a moment to like grab your bearings, and when you're really high up, sort of thing, is don't smoke a joint and actually get high, because oh god, not a fun time. Not a fun time.
Unless you're in the pyramids. I'll just leave it at that.
Right on top of.
I want to ask Hans if they're like, what are other experiences that match Machu Picchu? Like if you had like if you didn't get to do that one again, but you could only do 2 other ones.
If you get on a bigger tour in Egypt and you actually do the Between the Sphinx pause, they don't let you down into the Sphinx corridor at all. That's super amazing. On these bigger tours, they'll let you into the Osiris shaft, which was recently opened in 2017. So when I was there in 2016, it wasn't open. And then in 2017, it was. And we went down it in 2018. That was super amazing. But again, not for the faint of heart, because you're descending 100 feet on a rickety ladder a couple times.
What kind of group gives you the most advantage in getting between the? Is it like the Rosicrucians, the Templars?
No, so I work with the Kemet school of ancient mysticism.
It's the Kemets.
So Patricia Lehman,
Masonry,
her husband, and Stephen Mailer, who was Rosicrucian, kind of conformed this sect of ancient Egyptology in a sense around Hakim Iwan, Abdel Hakim Iwan, who was a indigenous wisdom keeper, and his stuff is super fascinating. Stephen kind of went in a little different direction. Patricia is going in even more of a different direction. But if you watch any of like Uncharted X, Ben stuff, he's doing a lot of stuff with Yusuf. Yusuf is a stonemason. He's, I want to say, Hakim's middle son. And his knowledge of stonework and a lot of his father's stuff is unbelievable, unsurpassed for sure. And so going through them, it's also through the Kemet school. You can do stuff through Brian Forrester, through his Hidden Inca tours. He does tours in Egypt as well. But we all kind of use the same, groups when we go there. And so even Grandmaster Timothy Hogan will be doing this in February. So I guess shout out to a plug for them going there in February. I'm hoping to be on that tour as well, because I would love to hear his knowledge of, ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, and be able to couple that with my own. Based on what
Grandmaster Timothy Hogan, he was the one that invented turntablism in the 80s, wasn't he?
Not sure I get the reference, but
Grandmaster Timothy Hogan?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that reference, but no, he's a Templar Grandmaster, not a DJ Grandmaster.
I get it confused.
Yeah, different story. That's why I'm rubbing the rhubarb. Anyway, so but yeah, no, we usually generally go through these tour groups and go there and do that. And at the end of the tour, we do the Osiris shaft, the Sphinx complex, and then we get 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours inside of the Great Pyramid. So if you go there as a general tourist, you'll pay $200-300. It's probably a little bit more now. And they give you 15 minutes, and they take you up into the King's Chamber, and that's all you ever see of the Great Pyramid. But if you're on more of a private tour, because you have more than 15, 20 people. The last one I was there in 2018, we had 80 people on our tour. But we had Brian Forrester, Hugh Newman, Andrew Collins, JJ Ainsworth, Patricia Yusuf, all as speakers. And so, I mean, it was a huge draw. And so I went as a manager and helped the tour group out, because they needed, we had more than 2 buses. And so I had to manage one of the buses and make sure everybody made it back to the buses at some of these sites, because you go to a site like Karnak, and man, you could spend 5 days there and see a fifth of it. So
pass out the trail mix, make sure everyone's like, yeah.
Here's your water. And I swear it didn't come from the Nile. I swear. But yeah, when you go up into the Great Pyramid, I mean, having 3 hours. So you originally go up into the Grand Gallery and then King's Chamber. They tell you can't tone, you can't do religious practice, you can't do this, you can't do that. Everybody breaks that, because
you can't tone and you can't meditate. They said,
no, you can't even do religious practice. And so when we were there in 2016, we had this guy that was like 6'4", British dude, and you're going down the tunnel going into the King's Chamber, and in the middle of it, there's an alcove that juts up, and that's where they got into the relieving chambers. Not to be confused with a bathroom, but anyway. And so he's scraping his head along the top of this, and he bumped up the second it opened up into the free space, and it's only a little over a meter wide. And so he immediately smashed his forehead into the other side and cut it open. And so we had a blood sacrifice. We were all toning. We had a wedding. It was just like we broke all the rules.
Do you go and buy like some scratch off tickets if that happens? Like you're with someone that starts bleeding in the temple? Like why would you just leave money on the table?
I'll bring up some of the photos that I did on the last show.
Yeah, please do. Thomas, do you have any photos of your trip to Peru?
Peru, yeah, I'd love to see that because you did a little different.
I'm sure I do.
You did a little different story than I did on that. So,
I mean, I wasn't there
for projects.
I was there for just like I got a $60 round trip ticket, and I was like, let's do this. And that was my whole motivation for going. I was like, probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, but it was also completely awe-inspiring. Like, it changed my outlook entirely just from going there.
I could imagine, and I hope to have that same experience one day. And how the heck do you find a $60, did you say round trip ticket?
It was it was when this airlines first started. Yeah, no,
right. It was Spirit Air, and it was the first 10 people that bought a round trip ticket to Peru got it for $6. And I was at Disney, and like the animator that I'm working in the office with, he buys it for $6, and he's convincing me like, bro, even if you buy it and you don't go, like, you're out $6 and you got a story and whatever, like, just the opportunity. I was like, all right. And when I went to go and buy mine, I guess I was like number 11, so the price had gone up to 60, and the next step was going to be 600, and I was like, for 60, all right, fine, whatever. We've got a year to figure it out. So we both had these round trip tickets for over a year.
Wow,
we're just sitting on it, and eventually we were like, all right, let's do it. And the entire trip, bro, with that $60 overhead was $300. And I wasn't like trying to be frugal. I was ready to spend like $1,500 or so at the time. $300 was for every single taxi and like train ride and airplane ride. Like, the whole entire trip was $300. It was nuts.
So we were talking earlier about the Egyptian influence in Peru. So this is called I thought it was an Inca burial, but I had to research it again because I'm doing more lectures on this. It's actually a Chimu burial, and it roughly dates to 1400 AD. But this is the headdress of Amun. Actually, all three of these are. And so this comes out of ancient Chem, or Egypt, before the Greeks were there, because Egypt comes from the Greeks. So it predates, 1600 BC, in a sense. And it shows duality, and yeah, I was blown away seeing this in the museum, Larco Lima Museum of Gold.
Right, yeah, and that crown with the two, like,
all three of them have two. They're just broken.
Yeah, and it's made of gold. Hey,
it's all gold. All this is gold.
Array,
solid gold.
Like, what are you receiving and sending wearing that on your crown chakra, right? Maybe.
Well, then on the right you have Amun. Well, Amun was known as the veil of darkness. So this is the fifth phase of the sun. And so the veil of darkness, or the hidden, this is where we get the word Amen from. So it's interesting that when you pray to the Almighty, please hear my prayer, Amen, you're actually saying, God, bury my prayer in darkness so you'll never hear it. Because of where it came from in ancient Chem, and the Hanuti priest caste obviously changed that. But we were going to talk about the Great Pyramid. So let me find.
Oh, the more the merrier. This is awesome stuff, Hans.
So this is the Osiris shaft. You're going down, wow, hundreds of feet into the earth, as you see here in the lower left. Grotte Grotte. This is from a German gentleman that put together this 3D capture of this, but you're 10 to 15 stories down under the ground, based on what we consider stories. This shaft here is what you see in this photo here. They've actually removed the rickety ass staircase from the right. I was the first person down outside of the guy that went down, and going down into darkness on a staircase when you have vertigo is an interesting thing to deal with. And then he turns the light on, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. But then you go down the second shaft here, which takes you down into the subterranean sarcophagus, which is this platform here with a green quartzite granite that's from Lebanon that was submerged beneath it. And this photo here was in the 1990s when Zahi Hawass and his crew were dredging this because the water table underneath the Giza Plateau is at this level now. It didn't used to be. It was a lot lower. And sometimes it was a lot higher. And so it's interesting that they lifted the lid off of this granite quartzite, you know, sarcophagus, and nothing was in it. And, you know, this is, you know, an 80-ton lid, so it's not going to take, you know, a lot of people to lift this for sure. And it's interesting because
how many to lift 80 tons?
So 100 tons is 200,000 pounds. So if the average person can move 100 pounds at a time, you're looking at anywhere from 1,000 people to 2,000 people to move something of this nature.
Or 3 Thomases at 32,000.
Or if they have pulleys, weights, and levers, that's a whole different story, but we're told that they didn't. So based on what we're being told, we have to take that into consideration and go, okay, where are 2,000 people fitting in this area? They can't. There's no way. Also interesting is that this box and its lid, which are they were all originally one piece, the lid is usually taken off the bottom so that they can keep the same harmonics within the granite of the box. And so the bottom of the box becomes the lid of the box. This doesn't fit down the main shaft going down into this area. There's no way to get it down and to turn the corners based on how much space there is. It doesn't fit down this shaft either in the upper left. And there are, you can't really see it in this photo that I took here. This is before Yusuf went into the water and tasted the water, which was interesting. He's like, oh, that's very sweet.
Really?
Because it's being filtered through all the granite and all the salt and the limestone rock. That's the bedrock. But there's a tunnel that goes off to the left and the tunnel that goes off to the right. And the tunnel that goes off to the right, I believe, based on where it's located, ends up underneath the Great Pyramid in the well shaft in the subterranean area. And so we're always told the Great Pyramid, you know, 8 sides of Great Pyramid, even though we've been told it's only 4 sides with the bottom, right? But if you look at it from the solstice, from an aerial point of view, from the Egyptian military, Air Force, you can see that there are 8 sides on it. And it's interesting that on the smallest of the 3 pyramids, well, there's actually 9, but of the 3 pyramids, it's also 8-sided. And so they're all 8-sided. And the question is why? Well, we don't really know, but we use radio telemetry today, over the horizon radio telemetry, using a 4 to 8-sided pyramid. So, machine, perhaps. So you go up the Grand Gallery. The tunnel to the Queen's Chamber is very similar to the tunnel to the King's Chamber, except it's shorter. I'm not a super fan of the Queen's Chamber. So you go into the King's Chamber. I was discussing the gentleman that split his head. This is him on the left. This is all of his blood on the floor.
There's your blood sacrifice, yeah.
We're all chanting, at least I am in this picture. And people are meditating on the floor. We were about to do a wedding for a friend of mine from New Zealand and his wife. And then you get in the box and you go through the ritual. And it's interesting that the main room resonates at like E or E flat, and the box resonates at F. And so when you're toning in the box and everybody else is toning in the room, you're enveloped in this alchemical swirl of sound frequency, and you feel like you're having an outer body experience. And so that's
and is this the thing you're not supposed to do? They're like, don't tone in the
box.
No,
don't tone. They don't want, well, because you're in a Muslim country and this goes against Allah. You know, this is huge.
Oh, it's a religious thing?
Oh, it's big time. Oh, they don't want you to do it because
I thought it was like, don't tap on the glass kind of thing.
No. This is all based on religion. And so it's sad because, this is
like, don't do what this was designed to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's funny because you're in the room and there's always a guard in the room with you. And it's weird because they'll start putting their hand in the box and start toning themselves because they feel the vibration of everybody else doing it. And so to me, that's always been like one of the most super fascinating elements of it. But when you go down the descending passageway, like I said, it just keeps going and going and going and going. And if you're claustrophobic, it's not a good idea. But you get over it real quick. And then you get down into the subterranean area, and there's the well shaft, and it goes down. This is like 40 feet down, and it's cemented off at the bottom. There's 2 cement blocks. You can see them. I guess if I zoom in, you can see them. You can see them here, right? There's 2 cement blocks. But there's a tunnel system that goes here, and there's another tunnel system that goes under here. So there's 2 layers of tunnels here, if not more. And they all head toward the Osirian shaft. But I like to go down the dead-end shaft, which is literally 1 meter by 1 meter. It's very small. It's very tight. If you're claustrophobic, maybe not a good thing. But I'm claustrophobic, so I did it. I made it through it. But you're scraping your knees, as you can see on like this moon rock. It's the bedrock that this thing was chiseled out of. And as you can see in the back here, there's a cement plug with a drill hole through it. But this is like 30 meters back, and I will sit here. Nobody's coming down any of the shafts, so I can't hear anybody else. I'll tone, I'll shut off my torch, and I'll start to meditate. And man, the noise is unbearable. But it's nothing that you're hearing. It's what you're feeling. It's your own inner energy, your own inner noise. And to me, that's always been the most amazing experience of that. So
that's epic. I hope to experience that myself one day. And right there, 2 pictures showing evidence of concreted off access to tunnels, correct?
There's a few more of those. I'll show them real quick. But when you go to the red pyramid, you have this corbelled system. And so if you see this from the descending passageway, it cuts in, it adjacents, and then you have to climb. And then there's one that flips the other direction. And so the thought is that this mirrors itself on the other side. Sneferu was not a title of a king or a pharaoh. We can get into that. It was actually a title of nature. And so Neferu means the dual harmony. And so when you go to the bent pyramid, you see that it has 2 angles, and we're told in history, oh, they messed up, and so they had to change the angle. And that's not the case, because now that they finally let people inside of it, there are actually 2 different resonating chambers, and they both resonate at different levels or different frequencies, and they're both elevated in different spots of the pyramid. And so this is interesting because you have chamber 1 with this corbelled ceiling, chamber 2 with a corbelled ceiling, very similar to the Great Pyramid. But then you go into chamber 3 down this, you have to climb all the way up. You now have a rickety staircase that goes up there, but you climb all the way up and you go down this tunnelway, which is what's on the left. And when you look right, you see chamber 3. Well, there's a cement plug in chamber 3, as if they were looking to see if there was another chamber system that vented off of this. And they even dynamited the floor, which you can see here in the lower right. And so it's a crime against humanity, damn it, quite honestly, that they would go to these levels to discover other elements of the chamber. But that is not part of the natural rock that's there. This is a cement plug. So anyway, as you were saying, yeah, it's interesting that they would do this, but they do this all over, especially in Egypt, all over different sites. They just don't want to tell us what's going on. And yeah, they were a bunch of slaves that drank beer. That's a great excuse. I think there's a lot more going on than that. So anyway, that's
dynamiting it to find treasure, right?
It is interesting, right? Like, I hadn't thought about that too much, but when you say something is a grave, then it's like to defile a grave. People are like, why are the pyramids a grave site? Like, what's the reason that you say that? Like, well, now all of a sudden you're defiling a grave site, so you won't look into it more.
But they never were. So this is, again, where the Greeks kind of screwed things up. They didn't realize the houses, and so there's 5 houses.
Mm-hmm.
Per which is the house of the wise. This is a university. This is a school or a hospital. The Purs were always the houses. There's Per-Ka, the house of the body. So this is a tomb. Per-Ba, the house of the spirit. This is a temple. Per-Neter, the house of nature, the house of an energy of nature. This is the pyramid. The Greeks knew this. They called it pyramidos, right? The fire in the middle. It wasn't a tomb ever. The tomb is Per-Ka. And then there's Per-A, the high house of the woman, or the house of the woman. And this is where the Greeks took the name Pharaoh from. And so
right.
There's never ever been a male pharaoh in ancient Chem or Egypt, period, ever.
I'll do a Longonian real quick and say Norse
the woman.
Friday, Freya, and
Freya, yeah, same. Exactly.
Make that connection. I don't know
wow.
if that's fair. Some people might disagree, but I think it's
so Scottish, Irish, where does this come from? So Scotia was Meritaten. This was Akhenaten's oldest daughter. And so when the Hanuti priests came in and persecuted his family for changing the Neters, or their gods, the natures, into Ra, the sun, or Aten, the sun, because there's 5 phases of the sun, they persecuted them, and he fled one direction, and she took all the druids north. And this is where Scotia comes from. So Freya, that makes a lot of sense. I've actually never thought of that before.
Yeah,
wow.
I also wonder about, so how do you feel about like alternate direction? Like, so we've been recently dealing with this the inversion theory that like things are into Africa, into the lower hemispheres from the North Pole, right? Do you have any thoughts on that theory? Like that it's
so the only example I have of that is the Rama invasion into ancient Egypt, or ancient India. So the Rama came from the north, and they invaded ancient India, and they were all this Dravidian class of people. This could have been the Denisovians. I mean, there's a lot of, but where did they come from?
Also, the fact that Egypt is in the north as opposed to in the south of Africa or something like that. It's not necessarily the case, but it kind of shows the idea.
I'm like Robert Seffer. I have some horrible aspects with the out of Africa, context, that we all came from mitochondrial Eve or Lucy or whatever. If you look at the different, we're all supposedly one race of humans, but if you look at the different races or tribes of humans, we can all intermix, we can all interbreed, and we can all create a hybridization of our intermixing and our interbreeding. But 2 people from a specific tribe cannot create somebody that's from a different tribe.
So that's an interesting thing, because we have talked about that recently, this idea of gene flow, and how, if you take like a horse and a donkey, they make a mule, which is not having the same promoter sequence.
But the mule can't reproduce, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas so humans are really interesting, kind of does tie us together with nuance, but it ties us together that we're able to have, we are essentially some sort of a species or superorganism with something that is highly uniting. But there's definitely differences between Floriensis, Denisovan, Neanderthal. I mean, those are things we have to acknowledge, right?
Cro-Magnon, ourselves, right? We all existed at the same time.
So does that to you suggest? I mean, what do you think that
makes me wonder? Are we still existing at the same time? So yeah, sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thought. Like, do we start out as, is this a singular telescopic seed that became a gene flowing series, or did they, right, exactly.
This is the phantom DNA experiments that I've talked about before, where they've taken a plasma green laser in a black, isolation chamber, basically, and they have 2 test tubes. One has seawater, the other one it's autoclaved, so there's nothing living in it, period, done deal. And they will shine the green plasma laser for 18 or more hours through the seawater into the other test tube. And when they come back to the experiment, both test tubes have the same amount of life in them. And so if we're drifting through different elements of the cosmos as we go around our galactic center, we come into different densities of bacteria and DNA. Our sun is a plasma laser generator, in a sense. It's not nuclear, it's plasma. It's an electromagnetic field, and we are the seawater, or the water-bearing planet. And so if we're drifting through different densities of DNA, we're going to pick those up. And so we have the Cambrian outbreak or the Pleistocene outbreak, and nobody knows where these things came from because they instantaneously, showed up in our history from what we're looking at. Even the human race, same thing. And so
kind of a 100th monkey, of
sure, very much so.
assembly. Yeah.
So as we keep going through these densities of cosmos, are we upgrading our DNA? Are we adding new DNA to the planet? Are new species arriving? I've been stung by a Portuguese man of war. If you look up a Portuguese man of war, where do they come from? Nobody knows. How do they breed? Nobody knows. They show up, full moon on the leeward side of islands, and they're a colonial organism. And so it's like, what is this? We don't share DNA with octopus. So again,
this is the very dangerous jellyfish, right? The man of war you're talking about.
Yeah, box jellies are more dangerous. But yeah, the man of war can be super dangerous. Yeah. I don't swim with some.
They're the ones that fill up with air and float on the surface.
That's right? Part of the colonial organism, but it's mostly the tentacles. And so the what happened here?
I wasn't ready to take over.
Oh yeah, no. The man of war, their tentacles. The turtles will eat these in Hawaii, and so the turtles will follow them and eat them, and they have no problem with them. It's like spaghetti to them. But then the tentacles are floating in the water, and you're swimming by them, and it wraps around your ear or under your arm.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like the idea of the laser producing life, like the idea of saline crystal that's affected by waves. And so you're using stars like Dyson spheres to populate the Earth with.
I never thought of using a Dyson sphere like that. That's interesting because
I feel like Li-Fi is the way to go, like directional, like unidirectional light wave to saline crystal.
And then you could let in whatever DNA or bacteria you need during the day.
Now I'm thinking though, I thought that, but now I'm thinking what if there were a dozen at the same time? Because then they were all competing at the speed of light to get to the Earth to start off the process of life, which is relatively similar.
Projected panspermia in a sense, of sorts.
So we have relatively similar DNA to each kind, but each one might have been started from separate,
That's like a life-creating laser. Like whatever you blast it at starts generating life.
Yeah, I tend to think that that's how you evolve, as a civilization.
Well, that's what our suns are. I mean, our sun is a big laser.
And that's also what mythologically people think of as suns. So a sun is this god-like singularity that knows all things and controls our world
and creates life.
Yeah. So if it is, if it's able to do that, and we're using it for even time, because time is the metric of change in radiation of symmetry of our, orbitals based on light. If it was completely solid, cold fusion, we wouldn't be moving at all. We'd be essentially outside of time. So we're depending, space-time is completely dependent on these stars that we're using as well. So if a civilization is evolving, and then there's, the next thing you want to do is colonize or do something. If there's this is the Battlestar Galactica thing, right? There's a dozen different highly civilized civilizations that have their own Dyson stars, and the Earth is at the center of that. And so if you can, whichever they want to use it, but there's treaties between them, they can't really destroy each other, but they can all, whoever gets there first, they can also exist simultaneously. That seems to be the
wow.
That seems to be what these alien shows.
They all kind of go down this trajectory. Yeah, you're right. No, that's an interesting step away to look back at it. Wow. Okay. All right.
I mean, because even the Egyptian idea of multiple gods, the idea that there's different maybe tribes of humans that are Eden and Adamu, or different, projects that are simultaneous would be interesting, because then we wouldn't, the idea that we all have the same biology is false. The idea that we all have the same goal-oriented mind, the idea that we come from the same intellectual education systems, there's so many things about us that are so different that it is interesting to wonder, should we really have an objective singular civilization, or are we supposed to?
So this is interesting when you look at movies like Time Machine, not the original, but the more recent one with what's his name? Can I think of his name?
I know what you're talking about, though.
Memento, but we end up in the future where we're all an amalgamation of every race that's on the planet. And so is this
Guy Pearce?
Yeah, thank you, Guy Pearce, exactly. So is this
Orlando Jones as the AI? Sorry,
that's right, in the New York Library. But we end up in the future as this amalgamation of all races, and so is this kind of the end result of collecting all this galactic DNA and bringing it into the Earth species, which we all are a part of. You know, I'm not suggesting.
Who knows which way is the way to go on that?
Yeah.
Like, obviously,
No, we don't really know, but I mean, I find that fascinating because, as I was saying earlier, certain tribes cannot create other tribes, but we can all blend together, and so I think that's really fascinating.
Here's the one thing that I always have to bring up is that pre-cataclysm there was megafauna, the Younger Dryas, like time frame, whenever the heck it was. In the fossil records, there was mega everything: giant beavers, giant sloths, giant armadillos, giant reptiles, giant everything. So why?
And we still have some remnants, like the whale. Apparently, a whale is 88 tons. A sperm whale could be 88 tons, which is a lot.
So why not giant humans? Just saying.
Well, especially considering that whales were on the land at some point, right? Like whales started as fish. They went onto the land. They were like, you know what? The water was a little bit better. They went back into the water and became whales.
Right.
God, I've got to find it on my bookshelf now. I have this book about the aquatic ape, basically, which talks about us not coming from trees, but coming from the ocean, because our filament under our nose is designed to create an air bubble when we swim underwater.
That's not my Bible, sir.
There's a bit of both, though, right? Water ape theory, it's that like we went from land back to water, back to land. Yeah. Which still would have started in water, but there's like
that's why we have long hair. You know, it
goes the other direction on our skin.
Why didn't the primates evolve? Why did we?
It seemed like all obvious, but like a woman came up with it or something. So like it wasn't like British.
Oh, they chewed her to death. It was in the 70s. I have it on my shelf. I'm not seeing it right now, but
that was a bad time to be a woman, I guess.
But it's genius. Why do we have long hair? Well, our children can grab onto it in the water, and it's
when
fascinating.
You look at it now, there's like a British dude from the 19th century that they found who did talk about it first, and he did have a beard. So now they can.
Oh, what's the beard for, right? I mean, hanging on to the hair of the father. So it's interesting that Avatar kind of brings this up in the last movie as well. There is this huge attraction to water, and so obviously James Cameron's going through the elements with his Avatar series, but it's super fascinating that he's touching on a lot of these old tropes or old memes, in a sense, that have some sort of validity to them. Don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Avatar movies are pretty impressive. Like the most impressive, I guess, that anything that are coming out right now in terms of like that story, that idea of like alternate world that we're exploiting that is our own world.
It's our own world. It's Pandora. It's the conquistadors all over again.
Really, isn't it like probably what happened to Earth?
It's Pocahontas.
It's a cycle of abuse,
No, but exactly. And so I think we keep retelling these stories. We tell the story of Atlantis. Are we not living it today?
Yeah,
we have all this technology that could destroy us in a heartbeat.
I mean that the Atlantis,
we're an interconnected global culture. This was Atlantis, or
the Avatar tree could be Rupus Negra, or like the Yggdrasil tree. Essentially.
Wow. Yeah. No. Correct. The rubber tree.
You're made of water, but you're also made of dirt, which is pretty cool. It's good to be both.
Wow. This evening's gone in some interesting directions. Love it. Always.
Exactly. It's a woo and it's a wow of a woo. Now let's be wowed by Thomas.
You were asking if I had any pictures. I dug a couple up. Now I don't have a presentation. These are literally just like pictures that I had. This is one of the better ones that I got. And anyone that's been here can attest. It's not easy to get a photo with no people in it
or clouds.
There's a couple hanging out, but I was like there at the crack of freaking dawn. It was super slippery, and the light's pretty early. But this is main part of Machu Picchu with Ayana Picchu, I believe, in the
Ayana Picchu's in the background, and to the right is Huayna Picchu, which is like across the valley. And
I got a couple better versions of
the most insane staircase you'll ever see.
So this, I believe, there's a staircase somewhere on that mountain, and it's basically like just a straight vertical shot that goes directly up.
It's not actually on this one; it's on the one across the valley.
Oh, here, I got another one.
This particular, you can climb to the top of this early morning, and then there's the moon temple underneath it. But if you go across the valley from Machu Picchu, we got to make sure we pronounce it correctly, because like many languages, it has two meanings. One is old man of the mountain, and the other one is old man's junk. So but yeah, to the right of where you're standing, if you were to look across the valley, you will see the staircase going up to the top of the mountain across the valley. And that is the one that you see online. That it's like, I don't know how people would ever want to climb that.
I do have proof that I was actually, there we go. And there I am standing at the freaking edge, that if you were to just take a step forward, you're literally falling down the mountain. Like there's nothing to prevent you.
I love your outfit. You look like it's very like Abercrombie.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on.
I used to dress like that. I feel like dressing like that right now. That just feels like
early
the right
2000s.
outfit.
So what do you?
The only reason I comment on it is because like it's so high up there. God, you're young. It's so high up there to get to Machu Picchu, and it's like it can be so like humid and everything else. Like I don't know, it's pretty impressive that you.
I'll just throw a couple out here too. Look at this. This was the restaurant.
Oh, look at you.
Of course. Well, where did Tupac get his name from?
It was called the Big Brother Cafe, and for some reason they had a picture of Shannon Doherty serving a pizza.
It means more than you think.
So Tupac was one of the original Inca rulers. So that's where his name,
so that's where they got it from.
His name comes from.
And then there you go. There was lunch.
Kui, my favorite dish.
Oh man,
that was.
It tastes like a rabbit, but it's a guinea pig. And
there you go. That was literally lunch that day.
That's
I don't
Kui.
know if
Did you have alpaca at all? Alpaca is like.
I used to eat a lot of alpaca pizza. I love that.
I didn't eat alpaca.
It's a camel, man. It's a camel.
Pig. Yeah.
It's
I used to eat alpaca
dry.
pizza at this place that played Ace of Base all the time, and it was just like I was like, I'm sure these people are on like speed and ecstasy in the middle of the salted desert.
No, they're doing ayahuasca all day.
Just wanted the pizza, but I think also salt just like is high energy. It just makes like a super high energy place. But it was just like 260 beat per minute Swedish pop music all the time, and alpaca pizza, which is pretty nice. I had a picture of me at Machu Picchu. I'll pull up real quickly.
I was going to say we're in Cusco because there's a back alley in Cusco that's all pizzas that do alpaca pizzas. Yeah.
So I got up there and I made this picture while I was up there because I took the picture of myself and then I realized, like, you know what, Machu Picchu, and I realized like the picture isn't complete.
So you're at the upper gate.
I'm sitting up there like putting Pikachu in my photo on my phone while I'm at Machu Picchu, wasting my time. It took about like 3 minutes, but still, I feel like it's crazy. I don't know.
God, I'm so glad we've all been there. Well, Bernie.
I haven't.
Poor Bernie.
Poor Bernie.
But such an amazing site. I mean, the whole site is driven by water, which is really interesting. There's fountains and waterways that's like split through the entire site. So, yeah, no, very fascinating with that. And near the hitching post of the sun, which is at the top, there are two rock structures that have huge like removals, as I call them, from the top of it. And I had to climb up onto another structure to take photos of it. But yeah, there's all these.
That Machu Picchu was before Pokemon Go, and so I do feel like I should sue, but I never did. So
you got the metadata timestamp to prove it.
I got something else that I can show from that.
That guy's got ideas.
When were you both there? Sorry, out of curiosity.
Last time I was there was 2016. For first time was 2012.
Okay, you've been twice. Oh wow! All right.
Yeah,
I went once in 2007, and this was something that I saw in Cusco that was wild, bro. I was there. I was like, this is some Illuminati AF kind of like
Denver Airport.
Right? Dude, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, this is the Peruvian Denver Airport. Like, this is so freaking occult, man.
This is in Cusco? Are you serious?
This is in Cusco. Yeah, this is I got a
2007. Yeah, that's not there anymore. But
there's another section of
There's
it.
still some
right
pretty
here.
wild pieces up there, though.
When I was there, they were digging up old structure. They were trying to fix the internet lines and some of the sewage lines. And they dug down about 5 feet under the floorboards, I would call them, of Cusco, and they discovered stairways going down and all these other tunnel systems underneath the Coricancha. And so, yeah,
this was wild. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when I saw it. This is like one of the big ones that was there.
When we were there, they were doing a cross country supercar race. It went from Cusco to Paracas, but it started in Cusco. So they're all going around the main square there next to that massive church that was sadly made out of all the megalithic blocks that were in Cusco. But anyway.
Remember when I went to Bolivia, we took a four-wheeler across the desert, and there was this old train, because the salt flats are, first off, just these like amazing hexagonal salt plains that go out in every direction for miles, and you're just like, everywhere you look is salt. But still doesn't follow Shaman John. Do I not? Let me see. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. I'll do it right now, Shaman.
Oh, look at this results. Like, live chat gets results.
Hey, I am following John Rasmussen. Is that who you're talking about? I think I am. I don't know. Send me the link if I'm wrong. I think if it's John Rasmussen, then I am following.